But before we talk about any of our live feeds, how could we not talk about one of the biggest legal stories in the country right now, and that's Brett Kavanaugh. That is the potential Supreme Court justice that is in the process of being nominated. This is President Trump's pick. Well, as most of you know, there is some big issues happening with this nominee, and that's the fact that he has been accused by a woman named Christine Blasey Ford. She is a professor who claims that Brett Kavanaugh tried to sexually assault her back in the 80s. And we have learned that the Senate Judiciary Committee will now hold a public hearing on Monday where both of these individuals will testify and provide their story. So let's analyze it a little bit more from our perspective. And I have two very special guests with me right now. First up, employment attorney and somebody who is very familiar with these kinds of cases, Douglas Wigdor. Douglas, great to have you here on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And of course, our very own Ron Blitzer. Ron, great to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Douglas, I'm going to start with you. What do you expect for Monday?
Well, I mean, it's really reminiscent of what happened back in the 1990s with Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, but we're obviously in a different era. We've now had the Me Too whole environment over the last couple of years, so I expect things to be very different in the attitudes towards the victim. Now, this obviously occurred back in the 1980s, alleged to have occurred back in the 1980s, but there's still ways that people can ask questions and try and substantiate what Dr. Ford has to say to determine whether or not the Senate should approve or consent, according to the Constitution, this Supreme Court nomination. Now, on the one hand, Judge Kavanaugh is in a difficult situation as well because this happened so long ago, so it's difficult to put up a defense. It's, for instance, an alibi defense or the like. He doesn't even know the exact day this occurred or the like. But we're starting to hear more and more about what's happening. For instance, Senator Hatch yesterday said that he had a conversation with Judge Kavanaugh, and Judge Kavanaugh told him, apparently, that he wasn't even at this party. I find that to be very interesting because maybe there's somebody else who was at the party who might place him there, and so we'll have maybe a contradiction of facts. But the hearing itself, as far as we know right now, will be Dr. Ford, Judge Kavanaugh. There's a third person who also is at issue here. Funny name, actually. His name is Mark Judge, of all last names. He apparently, according to his own admissions and things that he's written, was someone who drank a lot of alcohol in his high school years and blacked out and had a real alcohol problem. But he apparently was in the room at the time of this alleged sexual assault, which is very interesting, I think, because if Dr. Ford was going to make something up, just completely randomly make something up, why would she put a third person in the room who could then, back Judge Kavanaugh?
We're going to talk about that in a second. Ron, what would you say to the argument that you have to hold a judge into the highest regard, so the mere allegation that was put forward is enough to disqualify him?
So I wouldn't go as far to say that a mere allegation is enough to disqualify, because allegations are allegations. There's such a thing as due process. It's very important that we hear both sides, and I'm very happy that we're going to get a chance to do that. But, ever since, as far as I remember in the early 90s with President Clinton, people had sort of tried to compartmentalize someone's character from their ability to do their job. And that may be something that could be argued when it comes to a politician, some sort of political figure like a president. But for a Supreme Court justice, I think that's very different, because you're talking about someone's sense of right and wrong, their sense of judgment, what's fair. So if there is a credible argument here that he did do this, and there is sufficient evidence to really trust and believe these allegations, I think that's very damaging for Kavanaugh.
Okay, and Douglas, the people who support Kavanaugh, they can come forward and they say, well, something doesn't seem right about this story. Why didn't she come back years before when he was being nominated for the D.C. Circuit? Why come right now? Why is this unfolding right here? You can understand how people might be skeptical. Not to discount her story, but that's an argument. What would you say?
Yeah, well, I'm someone who routinely represents sexual assault victims, both when I was a prosecutor and now in civil practice. And it is not uncommon, especially a woman who was allegedly sexually assaulted in her teen years, her formative years, not to come forward immediately for a whole host of reasons. So this is not uncommon. But the very interesting fact in this particular matter is that in 2012, this is well before Judge Kavanaugh became the Supreme Court nominee, she did share with her psychologist when she and her husband were going through couples therapy on 2 separate occasions, this whole rape story, or what she's now saying happened. So what the defense might say, and what Judge Kavanaugh's defenders might say, that she's bringing this up for political reasons, that doesn't really add up because of the 2012 disclosure, in my view.
Both of you, real quick, you think he's going to be nominated? Confirmed?
I do, and I think what's really going to help him in this case is, unfortunately, not because of Ford, but because of the Democrats and how they waited so long to bring this to light.
I actually don't. And I'm not even sure that Monday will happen. I mean,
really?
Between today and Monday, a lot can happen. One thing we know, I have no information on this, by the way, but one thing we know about people who do these sorts of things, it's usually not a one-off. Wouldn't surprise me. I have no information on this, but it wouldn't surprise me if somebody else comes out of the woodwork. And it wouldn't surprise me as well, Judge Kavanaugh, who by all now seems like a family man, might not want to put his family through this entire hearing, have his children hear the account live in the spectacle. Perhaps he pulls out of respect for his family.
Okay, we'll have to see what happens. Douglas, thank you so much. Ron, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having a discussion with both of you on this really important topic. But before we talk about our live trials here on Law and Crime, there is always so much else happening across the country. So here are the top stories that are trending right now.